citizen survey presentation. I'll turn this over to you, City Manager.
All right, this evening, well, 2 years ago, you had a presentation about the citizen survey that was just videoed. We were in the thick of COVID, and this time we have Jason Morato, who's joining us from ETC Institute. He's joining us via Zoom. This is a 15 to 20-minute presentation, and I didn't want him to have to travel here from Kansas City for such a short presentation. So he's going to go over everything. You'll be able to interact with him. He can't see you, but he can hear you. And so you'll be able to ask questions and interact as if he's in the room. Just a quick note, the survey, as I mentioned late last week, was nearing ready to go. We didn't have it quite finished for today. I anticipate it being ready tomorrow to distribute. I'll offer you both print versions and links to the website. And for the general public, this presentation is being recorded now and anybody can watch it, but we'll also edit it and put it on the citizen survey site just for this piece. So all that will be released. It is likely tomorrow. If it is not
recording
tomorrow,
in progress.
Well, there we go. Recording in progress. Greg is making sure, and we will be able to get this out very publicly this week. Perfect. So Jason, if you are ready.
Okay. Yep, I'm ready. My name is Jason Morato. I'm with the ETC Institute. And today I'm going to go through the results from the 2022 community survey that we just finished conducting for the city of Auburn. We most recently conducted your survey in 2020, right before the pandemic in February of that year. And we first conducted your survey way back in 2006. So we've been doing this survey for many, many years now. So today I'm going to go through the most recent results of the survey. Just a little background about ETC Institute. We're based in Olathe, Kansas, which is in the Kansas City area, but we're a national leader in providing market research for local governments. We've been doing this type of work for 40 years, and in the last 10 years alone, we've conducted surveys in more than 900 communities all across the country. So this is really the type of work that we specialize in. This is just a quick rundown of what I'll go through today. I'll go over the purpose and methodology of the survey. What I call the bottom line up front are our main conclusions to the survey. And then I'll go through the major survey findings to show how we came to those conclusions. And I'll be happy to answer any questions as well. So there are several reasons to conduct a survey like this. One is to get an objective assessment of how satisfied Auburn residents are with major city services, and also to determine what residents feel are the top priorities for the community. We're also able to measure trends from the previous surveys. Most of these questions are the same ones that we asked last time in 2020. And some of these questions we've been asking every year going all the way back to 2006. And then we're also able to compare your results with other communities across the country. So this survey was administered by a combination of mail and online to randomly selected residents throughout the city. And that's our standard methodology for these surveys, is that mail online combination. Our goal was to receive at least 600 completed surveys. We had a very good response. We ended up with 685. And the results of those 685 surveys at the 95% level of confidence has a margin of error plus or minus 3.7%. So essentially that means that if we conducted this survey the same way 100 times, 95 times the results would be plus or minus 3.7% from what we're reporting. So the results aren't perfect, but the margin of error is very small. Here we have a map of the city. The red dots are households that completed the survey. So we had a very good distribution throughout the city. And as we were administering the survey, we were monitoring the demographics of survey respondents to make sure that the demographics of survey respondents reflect the actual population of the city. So we made sure we had a good representation from key demographic areas, such as age, race, ethnicity, and gender. So here are our main conclusions from the survey. We found that residents have a very positive perception of the city of Auburn. 95% of respondents feel Auburn is an excellent or a good place to live, and 94% feel Auburn is an excellent or a good place to raise children. And these numbers have consistently been some of the highest anywhere in the country, every time we've conducted your survey. We also found that overall satisfaction ratings are similar this year to what they were back in 2020. And that's a really good sign because the last survey was administered right before the pandemic. most cities that we've surveyed recently have had a decrease in satisfaction compared to where they were 2 or 3 years ago. And the results were really excellent in 2020. So that's a great sign that the satisfaction ratings overall are similar to what they were a couple of years ago. We also found that satisfaction with city services is much higher in Auburn than other cities. You're rated significantly above the US average in 69 out of the 72 areas that we compared. We'll look at some of these in more detail in a little bit, but there are a couple of areas I especially want to mention that stand out. One is that the overall quality of city services is 36% above the US average. And that's one of the most important questions on the survey, because they were asking your residents to take into account all of the services that you're providing. Typically, if your ratings are much higher than other cities for the overall quality of city services, it means the ratings are very high on the more specific services as well. So that's really kind of an indicator of how well you're doing overall. Then another area that really stood out was the overall quality of customer service. There you also rated 36% above the US average. And the top overall priorities were traffic flow and maintenance of city infrastructure. And those have been your top 2 priorities for a number of years. So first, we'll look at some general perceptions that residents have of the city. Here we ask residents to rate their perceptions of the city in a number of different ways. The dark blue are residents who are very satisfied. The light blue is satisfied. The gold is neutral, and we interpret neutral as meeting expectations. So a rating of a 3 on a 5-point scale. And then the pink are those who are dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. So obviously the positive ratings far outweigh the negative. Most residents are satisfied with the overall quality of life in the city, with the image of the city. The thing that stands out to me the most here is that 87% of respondents are satisfied with the overall quality of city services, and that's compared to only 2% who are dissatisfied. And again, that's really an indicator of how well you're doing overall. We also asked about the quality of life in Auburn. Most residents feel Auburn is an excellent or a good place to live and to raise children. Most also feel Auburn is a great place to work, to do business, and feel like Auburn is a diverse and inclusive community. This was the very first question on the survey. Here we're asking residents to rate major categories of city services. And then later on in the survey, we ask about some more specific areas within some of these categories. So here we're asking residents really to rate these areas at the big picture departmental level. So once again, the positive ratings far outweigh the negative, a lot more blue than there is pink. One of the things that really stood out to me here is how few residents are dissatisfied with any of these services. Other than traffic flow, for everything else, 12% or less are dissatisfied. And there's a lot of areas where less than 5% of residents are dissatisfied. Even for traffic flow, which is the lowest rated area, you have a lot more positive ratings than you do negative. And for a fast growing city, it's typical for the satisfaction ratings for traffic flow to be lower than some of the other categories that we surveyed. So we also found that satisfaction with the overall quality of city services is high in all parts of the city. So here we again have a map of the city. And what we did here is we broke the results out by census block group. So these are very small areas. And what this does is it tells us if residents in different parts of the city rate services differently or have different perceptions of the city. This map is for the overall quality of city services. And you can see the entire map is blue. In fact, some of the areas are dark blue, which is the highest possible rating. So this tells us that residents in all parts of the city are satisfied with the overall quality of city services. Sometimes what happens is that even if the ratings are very positive overall, once you break it into these smaller geographic areas, you see some areas where residents aren't as satisfied or don't feel like they're getting as good of services as people in other parts of the city. But here you can see that you're doing a great job providing services equally in all parts of the city. This map is for how residents feel about Auburn as a place to live. Not only is the entire map blue, but most of it is dark blue, which is the highest possible rating. So residents throughout the city feel that Auburn is a great place to live. And then the same thing for Auburn as a place to raise children. Throughout the city, residents feel that Auburn is a great place to raise children. So we also compared your results to other communities. As I mentioned earlier, you rate significantly higher than the US average, 69 out of the 72 areas that we compared. For these next few charts, the dark blue line are Auburn residents who are either very satisfied or satisfied. The gold bar are the satisfaction ratings for residents from all across the US. So this first chart is for perceptions of the city, and you can see your ratings are much higher than other cities. It's a place for the overall image, the overall value received for tax dollars, and the overall appearance of the city. One of the areas that really stands out is that 87% of residents are satisfied with the overall quality of your city services, and the national average is only 51%. Another one that really stands out is that 76% of respondents are satisfied with the overall value received for tax dollars. That's more than double the national average of 34%. So not only do most residents feel like you're doing a great job providing services, but they feel like they're getting excellent value for those services as well. Here we ask residents to rate their perceptions of the city as a place to live, as a place to raise children, as a place to work, and as a diverse and inclusive community. And you can see in all categories, your ratings are significantly better than other cities. This was that first question on the survey about major categories of city services. In 9 out of the 10 areas, your ratings are significantly higher than the national average. 15% or more above the national average in all 9 of those areas. In some cases, it's even much more than that. So this includes public safety, garbage recycling and yard waste, schools, library, parks and recreation. Customer service is one of the areas that really stands out. You're 36% above the national average in customer service. That's one of the areas where you rate the farthest above the national average. Communication is another area that really stands out. And then for infrastructure and codes, your ratings aren't quite as high in those areas as some of the other areas that we surveyed, but you can see both categories are still far above the national average. Traffic flow is the only one that's not significantly above other cities, but even that's really pretty much on par with the national average. Here are comparisons for city leadership, and you can see your ratings are more than 20% above the national average when it comes to the quality of leadership from elected officials and the effectiveness of the city manager. Nationally, the satisfaction rating for both of those is under 40%. And then for public safety, you rate above the national average in all 11 areas. In fact, you're more than 10% above the national average in all 11 areas. And you can see this includes a wide variety of different types of public safety services. The one that stands out the most to me here is the second row down. 92% of respondents are satisfied with the overall quality of police protection. The national average is only 55%. And then here you can see that residents feel safe in Auburn. Nearly all residents feel safe in their neighborhood during the day as well as at night. Overall, 92% of residents feel safe in Auburn. The national average is below 70%. And residents also feel safe downtown, in commercial and retail areas, and in parks. For parks and recreation, you rate above the national average in all 11 areas. In 9 of those areas, you're more than 10% above the US average. Some of the categories that really stand out here are special events and then youth athletic programs. And then for maintenance, you're above the national average in all 7 areas, but 6 areas you're more than 10% above the US average. And this includes a variety of services as well, such as city facilities, overall cleanliness of streets, sidewalks, and then street lighting. And then for communication, in all 3 areas, you're 15% or more above the US average. So this includes your website, social media, and then just the general availability of information about city programs and services. So we also compared your results to the previous survey in 2020. Compared to 2020, the satisfaction ratings have increased in 61 of the 124 areas, stayed the same in 21, decreased in 42. And again, these numbers are really, really good because most cities we've surveyed recently have had a lot more decreases and increases when we compare their results to before the pandemic started. The areas with the biggest increases in satisfaction include the availability of downtown parking. I know there's been a lot of investment in that area since the last survey, and it's definitely paid off. There's a 14% increase in satisfaction compared to just 2 years ago, which is a huge increase. In 2020, only 20% of residents were satisfied with downtown parking. Now it's up to 34%. The other biggest satisfaction increases include drinking water, overall appearance of downtown, playgrounds, maintenance of city facilities, cemeteries, animal control, new industrial development, and then transparency of city government. Here are the areas with the biggest decreases in satisfaction compared to 2020. Most of this is related to programming, which is a trend that we've seen all over the country, so not a big surprise. A lot of programs have had limited hours or been not available at all because of COVID. So really no red flags or anything too alarming here. And then here are comparisons for the most recent survey, one we just completed, which is the blue bar. The gold bar are satisfaction ratings for 2020, and then the gray bar are the satisfaction ratings for way back in 2006, which is the first year we conducted your survey. This is for major categories of city services, and you can see the satisfaction ratings are pretty similar now to what they were last time. Really no significant changes, which is, again, is a great sign, considering that most cities have seen decreases over the past couple of years. So now we'll look at top priorities. On the first question on the survey, we asked residents how satisfied they are with major categories of city services. As a follow-up question, we ask which of these services should receive the most emphasis over the next 2 years. And you can see the top two priorities are traffic flow and maintenance of city infrastructure. And again, those have been your top two priorities for a number of years. This is something we call the important satisfaction rating. And this analysis is based on two types of data. First, we ask residents how satisfied they are with services. As a follow-up question, we ask which of these services are the most important for city leaders to emphasize. So the idea behind this is those areas that have that combination of lower satisfaction, but at the same time are the most important, should be the highest priorities. This first table is for major categories of city services. And there's two areas that really stand out as highest priorities, and that's traffic flow and city infrastructure. This doesn't mean that you should ignore the areas in green, but making improvements to the areas in red will impact the greatest number of residents. This is the important satisfaction rating for maintenance. There are 4 areas in yellow. Yellow means those areas are a higher priority than those in green, either because residents feel like those areas are more important or the satisfaction is more lower. So the top priorities are just overall maintenance of streets, street lighting, biking paths and lanes, and then sidewalks. For public safety, the top priority is efforts to prevent crime. We saw that residents clearly feel safe in Auburn, and all areas of public safety receive very high satisfaction ratings. So this doesn't mean that there are concerns with efforts to prevent crime, but this is just an area that residents want to continue to see emphasized and continue to be a high priority in the coming years. And then for parks and recreation, there's 4 areas that stand out that have that combination of higher importance, but at the same time, ones that residents are a little less satisfied with. That includes walking trails, recreation centers, fitness areas within recreation centers, and then senior programs. For code enforcement, the highest priority is cleaning up overgrown and weedy lots. Removing dilapidated structures is a high priority as well, but residents didn't rate that one quite as important as cleaning up overgrown and weedy lots. Then the areas in green are more of a medium level priority. So that's everything that I had. Just a quick recap. We saw that residents have a very positive perception of the city. There's a lot of examples of that throughout the report. Overall, the satisfaction ratings are similar to your previous survey, which is a great sign because the ratings were excellent in 2020, and most cities have seen decreases in satisfaction over the past few years. Your ratings, once again, are much higher than most other cities. In particular, overall quality of city services and customer service stand out. But there obviously were many, many areas where your ratings are significantly higher than other cities. And then top overall priorities are traffic flow and maintenance of city infrastructure. So that's everything that I had. Obviously, the results are extremely positive once again, which is no surprise because they've consistently been among the highest in the nation every time we've conducted a survey, going all the way back now to 2016, so over 15 years now. So with that, does anyone have any questions or comments?
Sure, Jason, thank you for your time with us this afternoon. Sorry you're not here with us in person, but we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, there we go.
Has your company, has GTC been able to measure the impact of the COVID world we've lived in the last couple of years and how that's impacted municipalities and certainly how it's impacted surveys and citizens' responses?
Yeah, I mean, we just across the board overall, we've definitely seen a decrease in satisfaction, just generally compared to where we were a couple of years ago. Some services are hit particularly hard, like anything related to indoor programming, things that were really impacted by COVID. But really just general overall satisfaction ratings are definitely lower now than they were pre-COVID, which is one of the reasons, which I know I mentioned several times, but one of the reasons why it's so impressive that overall your satisfaction ratings are pretty similar to where they were a couple of years ago.
Jason, also now that we know that Auburn grew 40% over the last 10 years, and we believe we're continuing to grow at a pretty good clip, how does a community that is experiencing this type of growth and measuring with this kind of response from its citizen, do you see any correlation with that?
Well, one of your lower rated areas is traffic flow. And that's very, very common for fast growing cities. So no surprise in that at all. I don't think that we had particular questions about planning. We did have some questions about planning for growth. I think those ratings were similar, maybe a little bit lower than previous years, and not as high as some of the other areas we surveyed, but that's also typical for fast growing cities. So some of the categories like that, it's they're a little bit lower. Anything related to roads is also a tricky one for a fast growing city. So also not a surprise that those were some of your lowest rated areas as well. But even though I say there's some of your lowest rated areas, they're still at or above the national average when it comes to streets and traffic flow.
And Jason's also being kind. Remember, you'll have 373 raw comments at the end of the survey, and that will tell you a lot about what people are saying. A lot of those that are not as positive are centered around growth and tall buildings, which is very similar to what we saw 2 years ago. And Jason, I know that's not statistically an issue, but I want to be very clear that we publish the comments as they come in, period, and they're all in there. So you'll see that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Comments always tend to skew more negative. That's typical no matter what. But yeah, there were a lot of comments about a lot of things. I think there's about 50 or 60 pages of comments. So there's a lot of them.
Thank you. Any other questions from the council? Comments? Yeah, sure.
If you would, please, could you show the chart of the respondents again, the map that shows the
It's right at the very beginning.
I think it's one or two charts in.
Yeah, sure. Yep, that was one of the first ones. Sorry, I'm going way back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It seems like the area of the most significant growth in Auburn is significantly underrepresented in the respondents, the being that northern portion of the city. And yet the generalizations about overall satisfaction had everything marked in blue. I don't know quite how you correlate that, how you find just one respondent above NORA 280 and then you characterize the entire region as dark blue. I just wanted to see this again though.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at the final report when it comes in. I just appreciate I wanted to see that for just a second. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And these dots, we geocoded these to the block level, which is close it's close, but it's not the absolute exact address. That information is confidential, so might not be perfect, but it's close. And if there are areas where we didn't have any respondents, then we just merge them with a nearby census block group.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Whitten.
Hi, Jason. Thank you for your time. The national average, are those comparable to Auburn in size and type of a city, or is it just any city that you've done a survey throughout the US? Could be a much larger community or a much smaller community?
That national average is cities of all different sizes all over the country. We can drill down deeper and compare your results with more similar size cities or more on a regional basis. But that national average is just based on cities of all types all across the country.
ETC is actually expanded in Alabama a good bit, and I've spoken at a number of conferences this year about our citizen survey. There's been a lot of interest, and so we're getting a lot more customers in Alabama, which is good to benchmark. Mountain Brook followed suit not long after we did, and I'll think of some others Jason may know off the top of his head. But if the council's interested in that, ETC has many options and things we don't. I think that we don't utilize. The importance of this is we're going to be rolling into the budget period very soon, next month, as a matter of fact. And this is just one of the many tools we use, and I will be using to propose a budget to you that is aligning with what these are citizens we sometimes don't hear from. That's one of our goals is to, this is random on purpose, to also get feedback from people we're not normally hearing from, and is what we see out in the field or people we are hearing from, are these objectives aligning? This isn't the only thing we use, it's just one tool. But if you want further drill down information or comparison to other Alabama cities or those in the Southeast, we can do that as well, or college towns or whichever. We're happy to further that with Jason.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, it would be important because a lot of those dissatisfactions or the decrease or the gap between the national average and us, if you're including much larger communities, of course, they're going to have a lower satisfaction than we are, just because based on the nature of their size. But at some point, it might, maybe for the next one, it might be curious to see how we compare to same size, maybe in the Southeast, and maybe college communities as well.
Yeah, we certainly can do all of that. We did a survey for the city of Gainesville last year. They asked for a lot of that information, comparisons to college towns, cities in the Southeast. We do it for other cities as well, but that's just one of the recent examples I can think of. And we have conducted more cities recently in cities in Alabama. Mountain Brook's certainly one of them. Also Vestavia Hills, Trussville, Enterprise. We just did one for Jefferson County. So yeah, we have started to conduct more and more surveys throughout communities throughout Alabama.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Okay. Thank you, Jason. We appreciate your time.
That's great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.